France bans the burqa. Well, I suppose that shouldn't surprise me, although what does surprise me is the number of people that voted in favor of it and the few that voted against it, or one that voted against it. So I'm sure that there must be a lot more going on there than meets the Anglo eye, which I have. I think that people that live in the English-speaking world inevitably misjudge France, or the French world in general, when they see it, because however much the French and the English might, or the French and when I say French and English, I mean that in the Canadian sense, one falls into that habit. But I mean, I suppose, the Francosphere and the Anglosphere of the world. Inevitably, the two sides really misunderstand each other. Because I think that to a large number of Frenchmen, French people, Frenchness is subscribing to a certain set of values, a culture. It's not quite so racial a thing as it is to the English people, the English-speaking peoples. And France has a long tradition of deliberately spreading its culture, unique among the European colonial powers. They deliberately set out to spread their culture throughout their empire, and they were remarkably successful at this. Most of the French colonies, even to this day, are strongly French. The only exceptions, of course, being Southeast Asia now, Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. Although even there is a large element of Francophilia there. But in North Africa and in Western Africa, they have been so Gallicized, I suppose. Even if their overt political and cultural links with France are loose to non-existent, the social links are much stronger between France and, say, North Africa or West Africa than the links, say, between even Great Britain and my country, Canada. It's a much different dynamic, a much different relationship that they have. And I wouldn't be at all surprised, and this is something that I actually would like to look into, is the reaction of the Moroccan, Algerian, and Tunisian governments. Because, like France, these countries have strong, and sometimes it looks to us even draconian, ideas on secularism. To be a good Muslim is almost synonymous with being a good Algerian or a Tunisian or Moroccan, but there's something very alien to those cultures in being too religious, and the authorities will deal with you if you are, or if they decide you are, with an unmitigated and savage harshness. Algeria is the obvious case. President Bouteflika of Algeria is one of the most harshly anti-Islamic people on earth, or I shouldn't say anti-Islamic, but anti-Islamist, although he's shown lately that he seems to be softening his position a little bit. So that too, I think, is something that they've inherited from France, l'état laïque. And I'd also like to canvass or find some way of gauging French Muslim opinion on this, because the overwhelming majority of France's Muslims see themselves as French, because there are several traditions and streams in French thinking, French cultural thinking and self-image, and one of them is anyone is a Frenchman if he accepts France's values, France's culture, France's republic, and their universality. You can be born on the banks of the Congo River and become a Frenchman. You can be Chinese and become a Frenchman. It's almost the same way as, say, becoming an American. Your culture, your private life is your own business, but if you subscribe to the values of Frenchness, you are French. And I think that to a large extent, the French have been more or less successful at that. A lot of people sort of say, okay, most of Europe's Muslims are concentrated in the south of France. And I think that that's probably true. I've never been to the south of France, and consequently people say, well, the south of France is therefore like the north of Africa. But I have been to the north of Africa, and I was hoping to see something exotic and vaguely Middle Eastern when I went to North Africa to visit. And what I found there was a country that was even less Islamic than Turkey. Now that's saying something. And the French language is everywhere. The French way of doing things is evident everywhere. French business is everywhere. So it's almost as though North Africa has become southern France, and southern France have become North Africa, and these two cultures are sort of meshing into each other, which a certain tradition of French thinking, France's imperial policy during its period of colonialism, wanted to actually do, and long term it seems to have actually worked. In a certain way, a certain Frenchness, a certain idea of Franceness, or the Francosphere, starts in Brussels and ends somewhere in the south of Cameroon. It's one big unit in some ways. Now, I can see this banning of the burqa taking place in that tradition because, again, there are plenty of parallels to that in Muslim countries and Muslim-ruled countries in the French-speaking world, in the Francosphere. My gut feeling tells me that there's a little bit more to it than that because I can't help but think that there must be some element of Islamophobia about this, some element of racism about it. I wouldn't be surprised. I'd like to adopt a wait and see on this one, and again, I haven't really looked into it, and I'm just sort of spieling off opinions based upon my own personal study and experience with France and the Francosphere. And again, as an English-speaking person, I admit, when you look at France, when you look at the French world through the eyes of an Anglo, things are never as they seem. Things are never as simple as it looks, because the French are different from us in so many ways that, as to make even our basic assumptions as two different cultures difficult to sustain between the two. They look an awful lot like us. They live an awful lot like us. But in their hearts, they may be generally an awful lot like us. But in their hearts, they are often very, very different. And I think that this burqa issue might be one of those instances. Just a guess, and a not particularly educated one, but it's something that has caught my attention. Thank you.